Well, they say money doesn't buy happiness, but it can certainly buy choices. And sometimes it's in those quiet, consistent choices and choosing that we slowly rebuild our lives and our confidence and our sense of self. Welcome to Life Chapters Money Choices. I'm Michael Avery, and this is the podcast where we've been peeling back the layers of our money stories and uncovering what's really shaping the way we live and we spend and we grow. And in today's episode, we bring you a really heart-opening conversation between two remarkable women, Kim Potgieter, the force behind Chartered Wealth and this podcast series, and Lyndsay Barr, who is a writer, former social worker, and whose money story is very much about rewriting those beliefs that we hold core and how we do that with real intention, reaching across the world quite literally to be with her son. So ladies, great to have you in the podcast studio this week. And Lyndsay, really to start off with you, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up as a writer and a little bit of your background.
So thanks, Michael. My background is I grew up in a small town in Vereniging, and with a lovely, loving family, always wanted to help people, so it was a natural course for me to do social work. I loved it. It was a very rewarding time of my life. I spent about 15 years working at Cotlands, which was wonderful, and I'm a full-time mom, so being a mom was really a big part of my life and my dedication. I've got two kids, Mike and Liv, and I was cruising along, and then actually I had met Kim through our sons. We're great mates. And I remember my son had gone off to varsity and I wasn't doing social work. I was just working part-time every now and again. And I was feeling a little lost. And I remember sitting on the couch and I got a phone call from Kim and she said, "It's time." I said, "It's time for what?" She goes, "It's time. You need to re-enter the world."
Yeah. And
I said, "But what can I do?" I'd recently just been doing a course at Gibbs and on social entrepreneurship, and she said, "Just come and see me. You can write, you know." And I said, "But Kim, I know nothing about money. I can't work at a place that is all financial." And she was like, "You can." And that sort of changed the trajectory of my life. And that was actually in early 2020.
Wow. So middle of COVID, really, when we talk about early 2020.
Absolutely. The middle of COVID. Yeah. Well, just before COVID actually began.
Wow.
So it took a lot of courage and a lot of convincing from Kim for me to reframe that role from social worker into anything else.
And, you know, when you look at your story, it's quite interesting. My grandparents grew up in Three Rivers in Vereniging.
Same as me.
My grandfather worked for Stewart and Lloyd's. It's a kind of industrial heartland of the country. And my partner's kind of going through what you're going through at the moment with her kids off to varsity. And this idea that, okay, you come to a point where you say, well, what's next? Because you've framed your identity so much around being that, you know, that caregiver and a mother. I mean, how much of that psychology was going through your mind as you try to think about what's next for me?
I was so stuck because that is how I've framed myself my whole life. I've always been a mother and a social worker, and I literally could not see any other option for who I was. When I was doing the course at Gibbs, I had great ideas of doing NGO work and what I wanted to do, and it was quite eye-opening for me because it sort of reframed what people actually need and what you think they need.
Yes.
So that shook me up a little bit, and I was like, I'm putting my needs on what I think everyone needs out there. So I had to stop and think. I was very involved in at Baragwanath Hospital at that time. So that kind of sort of stopped me in my tracks. I also, during that course, realized at some point they were doing a whole thing on values, and I had to really rethink some of the stuff I was doing, and I had to confront the fact that I somehow had a notion in my head that money was bad. And I don't know how I'd come about that, but I think it was years of working in I don't know. It's just how I grew up, my mindset around it. So that was a bit of a pause. So it was a lot of work because I didn't know who I was anymore.
And that money is bad. It's so interesting when you say that's kind of, you know, it was obviously influenced by some earlier moment that you had with money. Can you remember your earliest life memory around money? Was it around the dinner table, not talking about it?
Money was always there.
Yeah.
So we always had it. So I kind of assumed it would always be there. It wasn't a feature in my life. I remember going and looking in my father's drawer. He was the doctor in Vereniging, and often he was paid in coins and stealing a few 2 rand coins. But it was always there. I never thought about it. I never thought about money in terms of career. I knew I wanted to become a social worker. No one ever said to me, how will you support yourself? I just assumed. And then I think when I was in the heart of working at Cotlands, it was during the AIDS time. So we had the hospice at Cotlands. I think it was more a psychological thing. People were suffering so much, and then the rest of the world was getting on with their lives and buying fancy cars, and I couldn't bring these two worlds together. And I think that's where I started getting a bit of a negative connotation, because I thought it's so unfair that there are people doing this when their children dying. And I think that's where my negative relationship came in.
And in South Africa, that's not uncommon, Kim, is it? Given that we live in such an unequal society, and I think many of us, and we're very privileged to be in the kind of leafy northern suburbs, are confronted with that deep inequality on a daily basis. And I don't find it very surprising that Lyndsay felt this negative connotation with money. Is it something that you encounter very often?
So what I encounter with that is that feeling of guilt. So that emotion comes in for a whole lot of people. Even when I see people when they do have quite a lot of money, there's a guilt that they've got so much and other people haven't got. And, maybe just some of my conversations with Lyndsay in the early times when I was saying to her, Linz, you've got so much to offer the world, don't stay hidden on your couch, was the fact that she'd gained all this wisdom working with people. She'd gained like a beautiful insight into people. And what I wanted was for her to be able to share that with maybe just a broader market, in the sense of there's a lot of people that can get involved and help her with the give back. But the work that she now does reaches a lot of people who can then all do the give back. So that was my idea of how we could do it. And so in that way, you use your gifts to help people less fortunate than you. And then hopefully, you can come with a little bit more peace around the guilt.
Did you ever, when you go back, I recall our first, chat and your initial stories with money. Did you ever have any of those emotions, those associated emotions of guilt, when you think of your early money stories and how they influenced your approach?
I really didn't. And I think that's something that I saw in Lyndsay that I could add to all the work that we were doing. I've always had the feeling of being abundant with money. Now, I come from Benoni. I didn't even live in a affluent area of Benoni at all, but that was my mindset that I had inside myself. So people often say to me, but Kim, and I go, well, I felt that I had a lot of money, and it's been really something that I feel privileged to have felt like that, because I haven't felt the scarcity, and because of that, like, opportunities have always just been open for me. So I've gone, I've got this opportunity, I've got that opportunity, but I know people even today and then who had triple what I've got, who don't have that always felt that they didn't have it. So that's why, for me, it is this mindset thing that we create around ourselves as opposed to an actual number.
Yeah, and perception is reality at the end of the day. And so if your perception is that scarcity mindset is layered with guilt, it's very difficult then to break out of that. So when you started to realize this, Lyndsay, that must have been a real aha moment for you. How did that make you feel when you started to tackle this head on?
It was huge for me, because I realized then I had to work a lot around the guilt thing, which I did, and I realized that I could still help people, I could still add value to the world, and that money wasn't bad. And I remember actually being coached by someone at Chartered around, do your nails. It's okay to spend some money on you. It's not taking away from what you offer the world. So little small steps I started doing, and it's been so empowering. It's literally changed my life, because I'm friends with money now. I've done a lot of work, my husband and I've made him, I think, if I can just say something, I heard one of my best friends say to my husband one day, she said, it must have been very hard to carry this all alone because I wasn't friends with money. I didn't want to know about it. So I didn't get involved in the decisions. I didn't help him. He used to go, can we look at a spreadsheet? I was like, no, I don't do money. So I left him, to do everything on his own. And I think it was such a lonely place. So after my friend had said that, I actually said to him, is that how you felt? And he said he really felt so lonely during that time and how it's changed our relationship.
Wow.
Because now I'm in there and I bring a different thing to the party because we got such different personalities. He's very analytical.
Yes.
I'm more big picture thinker. I can often now say, what about this? What if we do that? Have we looked at this? And he says it's so refreshing to not carry the burden on his own. So it's been a complete aha moment for me.
And it's really powerful that, because I think for men to kind of flip it around, often there can be that sense of burden that I've got to carry the responsibility on my shoulders and do and if you can bring your partner in and do this together, I think it's hugely freeing. I've turned 45 a couple of months ago, and I went through a similar kind of existential midlife moment where my partner actually said to me, he said, Michael, you work for everyone. You work for your children, through the divorce, you provide, a house, great school, you pay for me, everything else, but you're not looking after yourself. And I actually want you to go and do something for yourself, because if you don't do that, again, you get trapped into this kind of, I've always got like a martyr personality type. Kim, when you listen to that aspect of it, it's amazing how, we think money, but money actually becomes a bit of a relational therapist at the same time.
So definitely a whole lot of your relationship with money is your relationship with yourself. So if you're sharing about how you do everything for everybody else, and now your partner's recognizing that you need to do something for yourself, take it, because that is a real moment where you can actually make a big change to something that might not be serving you or those around you. And I think that whole thing like Christian was going through of being the only provider, the only person that was responsible, it is a huge responsibility on you. And I think it just lightens everybody being able to have those kind of discussions. Going back, I remember Lyndsay always going, because we went to the same school, and our headmaster at school had told her how bad she was at maths. So she had this thing in her head, I'm bad at maths. And just to think around it, how many women that I've met will go, I'm bad at maths. Now, maths and finance have nothing to do with each other. You know what I mean? There's so much more to it. And if we could just get out of that kind of language of going like that, which Lyndsay's really worked on. I mean, I think she's had to have a couple of mantras and to repeat it. But it's not serving you to keep believing something like that.
But you of all people know well, Kim, that the industry, and I know not every financial advisor is tarred with the same brush, and I'm at risk of tarring them with the same brush here, but the industry thrives on this asymmetry of knowledge and power. And I know that's why you came into this industry with your deeply psychological lens and your background to say, right, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be daunting. It doesn't have to be about 3-letter acronyms and making people feel inferior and insecure because they don't understand it. It isn't actually that hard at its core. So how did you start changing that mindset with Lyndsay? What kind of tools did you use to break down that kind of wall that we have that closes us off from talking about money and finances, and to make it more accessible?
Well, I think something I said to her was, it's just as difficult. I mean, in life, when we go, it's really hard to do this. It's just because we keep saying it. So I went with her and we broke it up, where we looked at what is money for. And the way we did it was she put together a vision board. Her son had got a trip and an opportunity to study in America. So she knew he was leaving. They were very close. She needed to be with him and she wanted to see him more often. Oh. Yeah, it was hectic. I mean, we had to go, well, if you keep saying you're bad at money, you're not going to be getting to America to see him.
Yeah, it becomes so self-reinforcing.
It does. So what we did was she put together, she did this beautiful vision board, and in the center she put a barometer where she actually was measuring as she was bringing in more money and how she was bringing it in, and that all the time. So what was why she was doing it? To go. It wasn't for the money's sake. It wasn't to have more money. It was to get her to America. And I believe that changed it for her, because once she's done her trip and seen that it was possible, something she thought was impossible, hadn't been to America or overseas out of this country for 25 years, she now felt empowered enough to bring it into other areas of her life. So I do believe what we do is we make it too big, and then we can't accomplish it. So we need to break it up, accomplish something, and then do some more.
That's a really powerful example of that kind of goal setting, but on a kind of manageable scale, and then bleeding that out into the rest of your financial planning. For you, Lyndsay, when you sat down and decided to do this, I know the big motivator is to see your son in America, and not only are you now dealing with kind of a bit of an empty nest syndrome, he's halfway around the world.
Yeah. I remember saying to my husband, we must go to graduation. He was like, oh, I don't know if that's going to be possible. And it's like a mama bear, I'm going. And then with the vision board, and I was so intentional, and every password I had and anything is getting me to America and having enough money. And I just started making little choices. I started saving. And in fact, I'm very proud of this, that I mostly paid for the trip. We went for the most amazing 3-week holiday. We got to see him graduate. I got to tick off New York. It was absolutely amazing. Something I'm so proud of and so grateful. But it's it started something in me now. I know that he's probably going to build a life there. I have to get over there as often as possible. So money's now become a tool for me, and I'm working very hard at it, and it's going well. I'm managing I'm saving. I've got a daughter who's planning on heading to New Zealand, so I'm really going to have to save for lots of things. I've got an empty nest. It's a perfect time to put all this energy into work and my career. So
and for you personally, I mean, obviously saving has now become a little bit more habituated, and you've got that discipline, but it's more than just saving. It's about making that money work for you as well. So how did you overcome that initial kind of daunting fear or anxiety that you had about finance and it being kind of overwhelming?
I realized, actually, once Kim told me I should become a financial planner, then I fell off my chair laughing. And she said, you don't understand this, different perspective you bring. So then I went back and really thought about my relationship with money and the maths thing. And I mean, I know I got lost in maths in grade 4 when we were doing fractions, and I never recovered.
Yeah.
And then, in those days you had to do home ec. So I remember saying, at least you'll make a good carrot cake, which I still can't do to this day. So I didn't come out with anything there. But then I realized, I can. I can't possibly be that terrible at maths. So again, just I did it through also working with the people at Chartered, doing some of the writing, trying to understand the concepts. So I always sort of say, if I can understand it, then our clients will understand it. So I've been quite intentional of trying to figure out the concepts. Yeah. And it's actually quite fun. I'm sure in another life I might have done maths at school.
Well, and listen, we can have a whole conversation around whether or not our school system and curriculum is actually fit for purpose, because I hear too many of those stories where you're young and there is a concept that you're struggling with, and all of a sudden teacher says, right, you can't do maths. They put you at the back of the class. They don't focus on you. You get streamed down in school, and for the rest of your life you self-label as someone who's bad at maths. And actually you're not bad at maths. The system was designed just to support a few people who got concepts developmentally earlier than the average, and I don't think that really is fit for purpose. But let's get stuck on that. Kim, there's too much jargon in the industry, isn't there? And so, Lyndsay, I love the fact that you say working through it, making it understandable, makes it accessible. And to my earlier point, I think the industry largely gets by on making it inaccessible to create barriers, to say, right, now you've got to access it through A, B, and C, and I'm Mr. A or she's Mrs. C.
So, Michael, I remember when I joined the industry, I mean, all those many, many years ago, and I used to watch people like present to their clients about how clever they were and what they were doing and how complex it was and how you possibly couldn't manage that. And I also realized then that that was a reason that a whole lot of people weren't sticking to what they were meant to be doing. Because at the end of the day, once you feel that empowered feeling, that changes why you do what you're doing. So for me, and when I did make that call to Lyndsay to join us, it was really because I wanted that insight that she had. Because I always say to any client, if you can't understand what we're telling you, stop us, because we need to get it into language that you understand it. Because at the end of the day, this is a joint journey that we're doing together. It's not us telling you what to do. Yes, you use a financial planner or a financial advisor in order to support you, but you both need to be in these conversations, understanding everything. And again, if you can have it in language that your client and everybody else understands, then you actually know what you're talking about. Because that jargon is often something that you're hiding behind, just so that you look cleverer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you talk about where the value of a good financial advisor comes in, it's almost like having a personal trainer that you want to go and see because you want to get rid of the dad bod. And, maybe you had a six-pack when you were playing rugby in high school and you want to see if you can get it back again. But you're going for the right reason, right? And so you're aligned with your personal trainer, and then you can speak the same language and motivate. And your personal trainer becomes that coach. And I think a good financial advisor is like that. You're already aligned, you're on the same page. You can't go to a financial advisor if you're not prepared to save and put in a bit of the hard yards and be disciplined, Lyndsay. Did you find that difficult, cultivating that discipline, sacrificing the cappuccino or two every month?
No, because I knew the goal. I was so clear on that goal. I was going to go over there and watch that child walk across that stage. So everything else fell away. But it was being clear then on, I think so for my husband and I working through all those exercises and being very clear on our values, and obviously family is one of a big value of ours. So just being clear on that really helped guide us to do it. So it was actually easy. It was actually quite fun. I used to come tell Kim, I'm nearly there. Anyone who would listen, I was telling them how much I'd saved for my trip. I was making my husband sell things as well. I was like, you've never used that. That must go. Yay, 1,000 rand to my savings account.
Watching the barometer.
Yeah, exactly. I actually designed it on ChatGPT. I made a picture of the Statue of Liberty and my fundraising goal and had it up there. But it was amazing.
And again, you've got to find, Kim, also what motivates you daily. Like some people are more visually motivated. So if you've got something that you can see and visually reference, that might motivate you versus someone else who might have a different personality and different things motivate them. It's tapping into that.
And I think also, we all talk about this, Lyndsay's talking about saving, and a lot of the times what I want to talk about with clients is investing.
Yes.
And I want to talk about sometimes the more long term, so it's not the goal right now. And even when we start talking about retirement and, are we going to, aren't we going to, a lot of that conversation is around what are you going to, what does it look like? So in order for you to make sacrifices in your 40s and your 50s, because you often do need to make the sacrifices so you can make the investments, you're doing it because you kind of are looking forward at who you're going to be. I got a lovely exercise where I actually go with, and I say to somebody, if you were 80, how would you want to be? What are the things you want to be doing? How do you want to be doing it?
Yeah.
And then, so from that picture, we work backwards and say, okay, so now what are the steps you need to take in order for you to be that 80-year-old? And it's all around that balance of some things for now, like Lyndsay's trip to America has been hugely important to her. All this is done now is also taught to the habit, but at the same time, she needs to now look, and her and Christian look at what does their retirement look like? What does it look like when they're not working? So we do have to have multiple levels to all of this.
Yeah.
Some's for now, some's for later.
And how are you thinking about that now, Lyndsay? Because again, I think when we're younger, that kind of marshmallow test, and we can't see ourselves well into the future, and we can't resist that marshmallow now. You clearly want to see your children, but you can't be, taking your eye off that retirement ball. So how are you and your husband discussing this?
A lot. We've for the first time, we've literally looked at what we do have and realizing obviously we have a gap, so we're going to have to work longer and harder, and maybe making decisions of how we're going to do that. So where it used to be something we never spoke about, we're very aware of it. Now we are very aware of what we have to do, any bonuses you get. Can't all go to America travel funds, sadly.
But awareness is such a big component of it, isn't it? I mean, because I find so many people just don't talk about it. They're blissfully like ostriches with their heads in the sand, and it'll just be fine. It'll magically be fine without planning.
We're having like a monthly check-in now.
Yeah.
So I said he knows not to show me a spreadsheet. Just tell me the big picture of it, and then we just discuss it. And it's been so helpful because we really just do bring such different ideas to the party. So it's become something that was so taboo, never spoken about, to something that's very much part of our life. And we go back to the exercises, especially around the money memories, because his are obviously very different. He came over from Ireland when he was 3, also to Vereniging. Imagine what that was like in the middle of winter. So he's got very different sort of money story as well. So we've worked through all that, and now we understand where we're all coming from. And it's been fabulous.
Again, I just see this as such an important psychological relationship tool to understand where your partner's money memories are coming from, Kim, because often we may look and say, well, why aren't you spending money on yourself? And yet you've come from this scarcity mindset because of something that may have happened in your past.
And so many times, so we both got that different story, and then we think it's against each other. So because we don't have these discussions, and you know what we all are, we all people that most of the time are thinking that whatever's happening is because of us. and that's what happens in relationships where all of a sudden your partner doesn't want to listen to you and doesn't want to look after themselves. I'm talking about you. And then you start going, well, it's because you don't care and you're not listening to me and everything like that. But if you can go backwards just in a neutral environment and actually just unpack where it came from and realize that it's got nothing to do with your partner at all. Yeah. It's got all to do with you, and then to share that with them. So all of a sudden they're actually rooting for you and they're not taking it so personally. And then you start working as a team to unpack all of this. And I think everything that I've listened to with Lyndsay is there's so much more team now because her and Christian can do this together. They're both understanding that each other's got such a different perspective. They've got a different language. So I love when she says Christian can't use, the analytical, can't show the spreadsheets, talk to me in big picture, but then every now and again show him the respect to look at one of his spreadsheets. But again, it's like you can hear it's not a finger pointing exercise. It's a team exercise, and I think like none of us are perfect in this at all. We've all picked up so much baggage, really so much baggage, that being able to unpack it together, wow, it's so much better than dealing with this all going on in your head
alone. I know, what could be worse? And especially if you are in a loving, committed relationship. It's so similar to the relationship I have with Nix. She came from a background where they really didn't ever have to think or worry about money. It was just kind of there. And I come from a very different background where it wasn't always there when I was a child, and so I was much more mindful. And so now I find myself I tend to hold on to it, and I'm hoarding and squirreling away for a moment where it might not be there again. And that's just but we're aware of it and we're having those conversations, and much more so since we started this podcast, Kim. So thank you very much. Just as we're ending our time together, Lyndsay, if you look at yourself before this journey and where you are now, how would you say you've changed? And what advice would you give to listeners out there who may find themselves in a similar boat?
So I think I've reinvented myself, which I'm very proud of. I think I'm entering into such a wonderful phase. I mean, in terms of my career and just self-belief of what I know now that I actually can do. And I think I see so many people now and friends of mine that are in midlife and maybe their kids are leaving and they're not sure what to do. I said, you can do it. I mean, I've upskilled. I've given this season of my life is now for creativity. My last season was give back. Yeah. So I've upskilled. I've done courses on content creation and podcasts and anything I can get my hands on, and AI, I love it. So it was just that self-belief. We've still got a whole season ahead of us and we can reinvent ourselves, and just understanding those self-limiting beliefs that we've all got and changing the narrative slowly. It's an exciting chapter.
Are you going to become a financial planner?
No, I might have to go and redo maths for matric. No, I think I'm not going to become a financial planner, but I'm certainly on the up and up in terms of, I'm not sure where it's going to take me, but I'm just loving the creativity. It's all come together. So I'm proud to work in the financial planning industry, which I never thought. If you'd have asked me that a few years ago, I would have never believed you.
Yeah, and what you're doing, is just as important. And it, by being someone who's involved in demystifying finance, in content creation, in connecting with people, I think that is just as important as getting the right financial advice. When you manage to tell a story and the scales drop from people's eyes, you've changed a life. That's powerful. And it goes back to your early, work in social security. I mean, if you touch one life, I mean, that makes it all worthwhile at the end of the day. Kim, for listeners who again may find themselves in a similar situation, what would your parting bit of advice be?
I think stop limiting yourself, because our biggest critic lives in our head. And that critic is one that we need to silence and go more for an inner voice and really ask ourselves, what do we want to be? What do we want to do?
Yeah. And I think often, the stories we tell ourselves about money are so self-reaffirming. So if you tell yourself negative stories, and I can't, you won't. But, and it sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but that inner voice, that inner monologue we have has got to change if we're going to change our current circumstances. And often, if you're listening to something like this podcast, it's because you're not happy with something out there. So start changing that internal monologue. Thank you very much, Kim Potgieter, Lyndsay Barr. Fantastic story. It's been a real pleasure meeting you and also developing this podcast with you in Chartered. And Kim, look forward to carrying on the good work that you're doing and helping people understand those money relationships and money stories we have. Well, Lyndsay Barr's story certainly reminds us that changing your money story isn't about winning the lottery or suddenly becoming a finance guru overnight. It's about believing that your future doesn't have to look like your past. It's a really inspiring story, and a heartfelt thanks again to both Lyndsay and Kim for this generous and tender conversation. Don't forget to follow Life Chapters Money Choices on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. And remember, it's not about being good with money, it's about letting money be good for your life. Take care.